Good morning, children. In this video, we are going to learn about the company's army. Okay, as you all know, the company has expanded its territory. They have put their armies in many of the kingdoms under the subsidiary alliance. So now the company wanted to strengthen an army. The company wanted to change its army. So what happened and how did they made this change in their army? We are going to study about this in this video. This is your last topic, and you can see over here the how the company army looked like. There are two pictures. They were using the modern weapons as well as they were using the infantry and cavalry. Both can be seen in the other picture. So let's move to the next slide and see what is there in that. So let's get ready for our learning today. So moving to the next slide, children. Yes, children. In this slide, we are going to study about the changes in the army. What was the changes that was brought in the army? As you all know, colonial rule in India brought many new ideas in the administration and many reforms was done by them, but their main power rested on their military strength. That is why you must be remembering they have made factories where they have kept the soldiers, they have kept their arms, because in this whenever they need it they can use it. So that is why there was lot of changes in the company's army. Now, before the company's rule, Mughal rulers were ruling in India, and the Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry and infantry. The cavalry dominated the army. Cavalry means sawar. Sawar are the people, sawar are the soldiers who ride on the horses. They are the trained soldiers on the horseback, and infantry, that is the paddle soldiers, that is the people who walk on the foot. You have seen in the previous picture, I have shown you how does the Mughal army looks like, and they were the main people in these type of infantry and cavalry was there in the Mughal army. Now, the soldiers were trained in the archery and the use of sword. They used mostly the weapons. These type of weapons like sword and archery was used by the soldiers, and Mughal state did not feel, they never felt, the Mughal people never felt that they need to train the army professionally or they should have a large army, because whenever they required the army, the rural areas where the jamindars were there, they used to provide them with lots and lots of paddle soldiers. That is the infantry. They used to provide them. Infantry soldiers were provided by the jamindars at the time of war or at the time of any battle. They used to be, the Mughal rulers used to get from the jamindars of the village. So now this was about, then what do we see more over here? Then in the late 18th century, we see the Mughal successors state like Awadh and Banaras started recruiting peasants into their armies and training them as a professional soldier. After some times, they felt that there need to be some change in the army. The change should occur in the army. So the rulers of Awadh, that is Lucknow and Banaras, started recruiting. Recruiting is a new word for you. Started hiring, started keeping, started giving jobs to the peasants. Peasants are the farmers in the army, and then they started training them as the professional soldiers. So this was the Mughal army which was there in India before the colonial army came into or became powerful in India. So in the next slide we will study about the colonial army, which was also known as a Sepoy Army. So moving to the next slide. Yes, children, we are going to learn about Sepoy Army. Sepoy Army, the name was given by the Britishers for their army as a Sepoy Army. The Sepoy Army got its name because East India Company were unable to pronounce, the people of East India Company were unable to pronounce Sipahi. So instead of Sipahi, they started calling them as a Sepoy. Now, initially, when the East India Company established its role and became powerful, the company adopted the same method of Mughals in hiring the soldiers. The same method was used by them in hiring the soldiers, and for itself, and they began recruiting the peasants. They began recruiting the peasants for the Sepoy Army. Now, after recruiting the peasants in this army, these peasants were trained and they were known as a Sepoy or a Sipahi in Hindi. Now, the warfare technology changed during the 1820s. The cavalry requirement, which was there in the company, which was there in the Mughal army, gradually it started declining. And even in the company's army, the cavalry requirement was declining. Now this happened because the British Empire was fighting war in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt, where the soldiers were armed with muskets and the matchlocks. The soldiers of the company army had to keep pace with changing military requirements as the infantry regiment now became more important. Now in this slide you are finding you are seeing two new words, that is muskets and the matchlocks. So let us find out the meaning of muskets and the matchlock. You must have written in your notebook, as I have told you earlier, to write all the new words and all the important words with their meaning in your notebook. So musket is a type of a heavy gun which is used by the infantry soldiers. Okay children, so what are musket? Musket is a heavy gun which is used by a infantry soldier, a soldiers who walk, paidal sawar, paidal army, the person who used to walk by the foot on the ground. Now, matchlocks. Matchlock is an early type of a gun in which the powder was ignited by the match. So through a match, you must be knowing what is a match. You are using it in your daily life to lightening anything. So through the match, they used to ignite or they used to burn the gunpowder which was put into the gun. So new type of guns was also made and it was used by the soldiers in the early 19th century, late 18th century and beginning of the early 19th century. All these things happened because the Britishers, when they fought the war with the Burma, with the Egypt and Afghanistan, these type of war ammunition was used in the war. Now, what do we see in early 19th century? In the beginning of 19th century or early 19th century period, we see that the British began to develop a uniform military culture. They wanted to develop a uniform military culture, not whatever not according to the area. They wanted to develop a common military culture among the people. Now the soldiers were given uniforms, they were given training, and most of the training was in the European style. They used to have drills, they used to have discipline, and their lifestyle was also regulated so that they can work in a proper way and they are ready for all the problems that arise in front of them. So Now moving to the next slide, but before moving to the next slide, let me tell you one more thing. When these sepoys, they became angry with the British policy, the first mutiny happened in India. The first mutiny against the Britishers happened in India, and the war of 1857 was started by the sepoys in India. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. I hope you have understood the difference between the Mughal army and the Sepoy army. If I am telling you, if you still have a doubt, please write it in the comment box. Complete your work in the notebook. Write the important points so it becomes easy for you to understand. So moving to the next slide. Now children, this is the last topic. This is the conclusion. Conclusion is what? When we have completed the entire lesson, the last paragraph, that what has happened after all these events, what has happened. So let us do about the conclusion. Let us find out what has happened after so many years of the colonial rule in India. So gradually we see that the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. They became a colonial power in India. Now they were not at all a mercantile, they were not at all a merchant, and the company was not at all mercantile. They became the territorial colonial power in India. Now, another new thing happened in the world, because in India the Britishers were expanding their control in India, trying to take away the resources from India to the England, and all these resources was used by them in the London. Now, due to that, the Britishers were finding the new market, that we will do on later on, that we will do all these things later on, but just telling you now for your information that there are many things that happen in England even when we Indians were being suffered by the Britishers. So what do we see here? That invention of a steam technology, was a major invention that happened, and due to this invention, it used to take 6 to 8 months to reach India. Now the time became so less that only with the 3/4 of the lesson, 3/4 of the journey, they started coming to the India. Now when the journey time became small for them, many British families started coming and settling down in India, and they were here doing lots of work for their own benefit, and they started exploiting the people of India. And by 1857 we see that the East India Company has lost its trust on the people, and East India Company had virtually taken the entire India under its control, and they became very powerful. So from a trader, they turned into a territory holder, or from a trader, they became a ruler of India. Now children, this was all about your chapter. Let's revise the chapter, and not the chapter, but let's revise the topic. Let's revise the topic, and then we will do the assignment, and be ready with your class test, because I'll be conducting a class test in the next class. So you all can complete that test, or you all can do the test, and please complete your work. That is very important. Okay children? Yes children, this is the last slide. We are going to summarize what we have done today. Today we have learnt about the changes that was done by the British in the army, and we see that initially that the British followed the Mughal system of army, which was mainly composed of cavalry and infantry, and cavalry dominated the army. But in the 19th century, early 19th century, we see that the British developed a uniform military culture. Soldiers were subjected to the European style of training. Drill was compulsory for them, and discipline was also there that regulated the lives of the soldiers. The British introduced muskets and the matchlocks in the army, so new types of guns were introduced in the army, and infantry regiment became more important. Now there was no need of a cavalry regiment, they wanted more of the infantry regiment. And gradually we see that the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. They became the rulers of India. Another important thing that happened during this period was the invention of the steam technology, and due to this technology, due to this invention, the steamship was built and the travel time for the British was shortened due to the steamship, where previously it used to take 6 to 8 months for a British to reach India. Now it used to hardly take 3 weeks to travel to India. So more and more of the Britishers and their families started coming to India and coming and doing the work and coming and establishing their business in India. So gradually India became like a second home to them, and by 1857 we see East India Company has virtually taken the whole of India under its control. This was all about your chapter over here. So moving to the last slide of today, that is for your assignment. Let's go back to that slide. Children, this is your reinforcement, which is your homework. You have to do all the questions, complete all the questions in your notebook. Refer to the textbook and online videos for your answer. If you are finding any difficulty, please refer to your textbook and the online videos which has been sent to you. Now the first question. The first question is, write the major features of the Mughal army. What are the features of the Mughal army? You can draw the mind map of it, or you can write the features in the flowchart also. So it is up to you how you write the features of the Mughal army. The second question, what do you mean by the term Sepoy? What is the meaning of the term Sepoy? Write the meaning of the term Sepoy. Then the third question is, explain the features of the Sepoy army. What are the features of the Sepoy army? You are going to write the last question. How new steam technology was helpful for the company? What are the things that happened after the steam technology was invented? How it helped the company in establishing their role in India? So write about it, and these are your questions. Be prepared for your exam. You have to write one test which is also uploaded on your site. Please do that test, write the answers, but when you are writing the answers for the test, please don't open your textbook. It is not an open book test. Read the textbook and then attempt all the questions. All the best, and this is the end of your chapter. Thank you very much, children.